Hello, this is Y490 Politics of the Internet. This lecture was originally delivered on April 11th, 2012. The lecture concerns the argument of Jonathan Zittrain's book, The Future of the Internet and How to Stop It. Zittrain contrasts two types of network systems: the PC type of network system, which he calls a generative system or generative network, and the iPhone or smartphone-like system which he calls an appliance-sized or tethered network. In the PC networks, you have open software that, to the extent that anybody should be able to use the network as long as they're connected to it. The iPhone or smartphone networks are proprietary networks that require the purchase of particular types of devices. In the case of the PC network, control is completely anarchic. That is, there's no single center of control, whereas in the appliance-sized or tethered smartphone networks, there's some sort of central control. Zittrain's definition of generativity is as follows: a system's capacity to produce unanticipated change through unfiltered contributions from broad and varied audiences. He sees there being five main features of a generative network: leverage, adaptability, ease of mastery, accessibility, and transferability. According to Zittrain, the IT ecosystem functions best with a generative technology at its core. Generativity instigates a pattern both within and beyond the technological layers of the IT ecosystem. Proponents of generative systems ignore the drawbacks attendant to generativity's success at their peril. All generative systems are based on a layer model in which the highest layer tends to be the content or applications layer, whereas the lowest is the physical layer, and in between is an operating system of some sort. So in the illustration, you see in a typical internet system, you have TCP/IP protocols as being something like an operating system, whereas in PC networks you have Windows, Linux, or the Apple operating system. Generally speaking, these layered systems allow engineers to tinker with one layer at a time without necessarily affecting the other layers. The hourglass shape means that there is lots of room for innovation above and below the operating systems and protocol levels, but innovation within those middle levels tends to be concentrated in the companies that control the operating systems. There are many problems with generative technologies and anarchic networks. They allow for what's called malware, which includes worms, viruses, and Trojan horses. They permit incompatibilities between hardware and software or between different types of hardware, which create difficulties for beginners. Often there are steep learning curves for beginners. They permit the use by criminals, political extremists, hate mongers, pornographers, child molesters, and cyber stalkers. The generative networks tend to be vulnerable to cyber attacks of various kinds that go beyond malware, such as denial of service attacks and identity theft. Identity theft is a blanket term for any type of crime wherein the offender uses another individual's legitimate personal information to commit acts of fraud or deception, typically for illicit financial gain. Where a person's identification details are obtained through various covert networks, from rifling through the contents of household dustbins to phishing. Phishing is a form of fraud where the criminal pretends to be a reputable organization that needs information about some business you may have done with them, usually using email. When you answer the email and give them your personal information, then they can use it for fraudulent purposes. There's been a series of ads on identity theft done by some credit card companies, and anyway, it's uh, an act that identity theft is an act that leads a person to be able, makes it possible for a person to be able to commit fraud using your personal information. There is also quite a lot of hate speech on the internet. So, for example, there are Nazis and neo-Nazis who are using the internet to spread their ideas, to gather supporters, or to find people who are in geographically distant locations and bring them together through websites. So examples would be the World Church of the Creator, the Ku Klux Klan, the Volksfront, and the White Pride Worldwide Network, all of which have logos to the right there. Some countries have restricted the sale of Nazi and neo-Nazi objects. The French government in particular has asked Yahoo not to offer or to take down items for sale on the Yahoo network that involve Nazi paraphernalia. Same thing has happened for eBay. There are a number of hate groups that are monitored by groups like Hate Watch and and other groups. Tethered systems also have some dangers attached to them. They can actually, from the central control, they can reprogram the appliances, the devices, at will, which they normally do to update software, but they could reprogram them for other purposes. They could also use the appliances to record private information and make it available to those with access to the network, such as police or security agencies. They could use the microphone and the video camera in particular. And there could be censorship on tethered networks, so in order to keep off pornography and things like that, but also for other reasons, the controllers of the tethered networks might censor the content on the network. So here are some examples of censorship on tethered networks. Skype in China is used to censor words like Falun Gong and Dalai Lama. The FBI could, in principle, use OnStar for surveillance. And Google also was asked, when it was in China, to make searches for Falun Gong and Tibet fail when users requested it. The News of the World not too long ago got into trouble for hacking into cell phones. First, they hacked into the cell phone of Prince Harry, showing a photo of him wearing a Nazi uniform to a fancy dress party. More ominously, they hacked into the cell phone of Millie Dowler, a victim of kidnap and murder, as a way to get additional information for publication. Much to the distress of her family. And so eventually the News Corporation was exposed, and there were some prosecutions and convictions of members of that organization. Should cell phone networks be more like the PC-based internet? Cell phone operators clearly are opposed to this and have lobbied very hard to make cell phone systems not subject to net neutrality guarantees, for example. So the deal that was worked out by the FCC basically exempted cell operators from the requirements that were placed upon other kinds of internet service providers. And then there's the question of, within the cell phone system, whether more open systems like the Google Android platform are superior to the more closed platforms like the Apple's iTunes, iPod, iPhone, iPad system.